It was in November of 2024. And I was like, I'm starting a sun care brand. Everyone was like, oh, Nico, why? Why would you do that? Like, that sounds really hard. And I loved that reaction because I was kind of like, yeah, it is hard for everyone. That's why everyone doesn't do it. I'm Nico Morga Alden, and I'm the founder of Alta Marea. Let's go.
Welcome to She Can Drive, the podcast where we have brave conversations about dreams, challenges, and trade-offs to help you take the next step on your unique journey to building something meaningful. Let's get into it. Today, I'm sitting with Nico Morga Alden, the founder of Alta Marea. Alta Marea is an Italian-made sun care brand that just launched a few weeks ago. And I'm so excited for this one because Nico has 2 decades at the forefront of the biggest beauty houses in the world. We're talking LVMH, Unilever, Makeup by Mario, and she is here to share the lessons it took her 20 years to build. In this episode, we're first going to demystify all the misinformation around sun care. Then we'll get into what is actually happening inside the beauty industry right now. And if you're building in this space, she's going to tell you exactly what to expect and what to avoid from her very unique vantage point and experience, having been on both sides of the table. Nico, welcome to She Can Drive.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Before we dive in, I want to say a quick thank you to Fundraising, who are partnering with She Can Drive on this series. Fundraising is an investment readiness ecosystem for female founders, and Nico is actually one of their participants. So if you're in the early stages of building and you want to understand what investor ready looks like in practice, head to the link in the show notes to find out more about Fundraising. Nico, I want to start at the very beginning of where I think this conversation should start, which is, what do we do with our sun care? If we just bring it back to the basics of wearing SPF, sunscreen, how frequently are we supposed to wear it? And what does the indication of the protection factor actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, most dermatologists would recommend you wear sunscreen every day. Not just for the carcinogen effect of UVA and UVB filters, but also because it's known to break down collagen. The sun is known to break down collagen. So it's a known effect in aging. And it's similar to, like, eat well, exercise, wear your sunscreen. It's a matter of longevity.
So I live in London, and sometimes it's super cloudy and gray, and I check my app for the UV filter and it says that it's 0 or 1. So what does that mean? Do I still have to wear it?
When you think about UV, the shorthand is UVA, A is for aging, UVB, B is for burning.
Okay.
So when you look at the UV index, typically it doesn't kind of capture that full spectrum.
Gotcha.
There's still a lot of rays coming through the clouds. There's still a lot of UV damage that could potentially be had. Of course, it's a lot more carcinogenic if you get burns. Burns or any kind of serious sun exposure, it's a lot more carcinogenic. But when you think about kind of long-term sun exposure, that's what ages your skin. That's what breaks down your collagen.
Got it. Then my other question is, what's the minimum SPF factor or protection that you need to wear in order to counteract that?
Whatever SPF protection you feel comfortable wearing is better than none. But it's actually really interesting because SPF is on, they call it a logarithmic scale. So basically SPF 50, it blocks out 99% of rays, and SPF 30 blocks out 95% of rays. Okay. So it's even the SPF 30 would be protective. You have to make sure it's broad spectrum. That's a big thing, is that turn the bottle around, make sure that it protects against it's UVA and UVB. It should say broad spectrum. Here in the EU, that is regulated, where the essentially UVB filters, they need to be that SPF number. So my UVB filters are SPF 50, And then the UVA filters need to be at least a third of it. UVA rays and UVB rays cause cancer. They are both carcinogenic. So when you think about kind of protecting yourself against skin cancer, which is actually a major concern of millennials are getting skin cancer at a rate of 30% more than our predecessors and than Gen X.
I didn't know that. I'm a bit shocked. Why is that?
There's a few reasons. One is we had tanning beds. We had access to tanning beds when we were growing up. I know I went to tanning beds when I was growing up because I'm Italian American and that's what we do. But then, there's the world is getting hotter, and the sun rays are a little bit more damaging than they were generations ago. Or at least that's the theory, of course, but that stat is for melanoma. Okay. Melanoma is that's the deadliest skin cancer. So that is, sometimes you get basal cell carcinoma that kind of pops up. I've had that before, kind of pops up on you. You can get it taken off, but melanoma is the most deadly and the most serious type of skin cancer. So that is the skin cancer that's actually, it's proliferating a lot more with millennials.
Okay, that's the one that's increasing. Okay.
Yes.
Both of those cancers are driven by the UVA and the UVB.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, there's always a genetic element, but the use of sunscreen, the adoption of sunscreen is really the only way to combat this kind of public health issue. So a big part of why I created Alta Marea, I've been in the beauty industry for a long time selling, skin creams and lipsticks and brow pencils, and they're all great. They're
nice to have.
They're nice to have, but I just felt like there was this really strange gap between what we talk about in the industry, which is, these really high-tech sunscreen formulas that cosmetic chemists are really proud of and happy to talk about. And we talk a lot about sun safety and how technology is really moving in that way for sunscreen. And then I see with influencers and even with media posting about how one can only wear mineral because that's the only thing that doesn't give you cancer. It's just, it was a very strange, disconnect between kind of the formulation reality and what people are being told. And then there's real health consequences in the middle of that. This isn't like, you're not getting your contour right. This is getting deadly cancer. So it just felt like there needed to be more voices making sunscreen sexy. How do you get people to adopt sunscreen? You give them great formulas that don't have a white cast, that they actually want to wear. And you make it sexy. You make it so that they pull it out at the table, so they're happy to post about it. Like there should be a community around this sun safety that really does protect you and makes you feel great.
This is so true. Formulations, let's talk about this.
I've had to walk away from formulations because we simply couldn't make it work with that manufacturer. So like maybe their MOQ is too high, or maybe they won't let me own the formula or things like that. So there's definitely a split in the sun care industry. There's kind of like the clinical brands, excellent technologies, will never be canceled. They don't cut corners. They have really great R&D labs. And then there's the indie brands. They really put all of their investment and know-how into the packaging and into the marketing. And again, I've been in every other category in beauty, and that doesn't fly in makeup. That doesn't fly in skincare, most of skincare. The customer demands brand and formula integrity.
Obviously, there's apps that you can scan and see the score of how clean and toxic a product is. But then with sunscreen, you need to know how effective it is. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. It's tricky. So I think there was a place in the industry for a brand that is trusted, that has kind of like the clinical integrity that all of those clinical brands had with a great brand. There's just more to be said about like sunscreens that have the science behind them.
So is that going to be a big part of your marketing and your communications and just educating the consumer?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think that is the USP. So that it's really great protection, really great performance. That's also pleasurable.
So I know that you specifically timed your moment. You described that there was a very specific equation the personal side, of course, for you, the readiness of the market, the resources, all having to align at the same time. So when was that for you?
That was in November of 2024. It was a moment where I felt like, okay, now's the time. And, I've always worked in a founder-led brand or a celebrity brand. And I've always kind of been the operator behind the founder.
Yes.
So I have always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to found my own brand. And, to be completely honest, I've learned a lot from the mistakes of the founders that I have worked for. So there's no way not to make mistakes, right? So
I mean, everything you do in your career up until the moment you build your business is a school.
Definitely.
And the best thing to learn is the mistakes to avoid.
I've kind of the founder mentality in me for a very long time. I'm a kind of deeply entrepreneurial person.
Yeah.
So I think I've been asked this a few times where people are like, how did you know that you wanted to launch this? How did you know that you wanted to be a founder? And I'm kind of like, it almost came out of me. So yeah, the personal elements of, feeling at a certain point financially secure where I can say, okay, I'm gonna put everything that I've worked for into this. I'm gonna put all of me into this. I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna call all my friends in the industry. I'm gonna put, a chunk of my savings into this. But I think also, again, with the personal side of things, I have been kind of bookmarking people that I've wanted to work with for the past, again, 15 years, 10 years, knowing that I wanted to launch my own brand, thinking like, if I work with a certain creative, I'm definitely going to work with them again. Or, I'm going to keep this contract manufacturer relationship because they're excellent.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to work with them again. So feeling comfortable that, I could build this and I could build this solo. I think that was a big thing. But then also being in the beauty industry for so long, we have 3% growth in categories, and that's tremendous. And I was watching from the sidelines kind of I guess not from the sidelines, from a very central seat. I was watching sun care become this explosive category where here in the UK, prestige sun care grew by 32% last year. So it's just exploding, and there weren't a lot of it wasn't a very crowded category in the sense where, makeup is crowded, fragrance, very crowded, hair care, very crowded as of recently. I kind of understood why, though.
Yeah, tell me why. I'm just going to take an educated guess here.
Yes, please.
Is it probably the most technical and the most difficult in terms of the formulation, and probably the most expensive because the technology is new?
Yes, all of the above. Yeah, all of the above. But also, I think that the regulations are really intimidating.
Okay.
I've developed an SPF product for 4 different brands. So I've personally made a lot of mistakes developing those. They either kind of go on like greasy white paint with like the mineral sunscreens, or they're the old chemical filters that aren't very photostable, or they're lacking in photostability. Such rigorous testing that goes into this. Really months of okay, we're done with the formula, put it in the final package, and then let's put it through everything, let's make it 200 degrees and let's, put it in this strange environment, super cold, super hot. And so there's a lot of testing to make sure it's safe. And it's also very tricky to formulate something that is globally regulatory approved because again, the US doesn't have that many filters approved. And so when I started talking to kind of my industry friends and the people I knew in the industry after I left, and I was like, I'm starting a sun care brand, everyone was like, oh, Nico, why would you do that? That sounds really hard. And I loved that reaction because I was kind of like, yeah, it is hard for everyone. That's why everyone doesn't do it. Yeah, that really was something that kind of egged me on. Yeah. And I think I have a lot of industry friends who are also creating amazing brands, but their formulations are skincare, fragrance. There's a real rule book, which is why those categories have very much more crowded markets. Because
it's easier. The barrier to entry is significantly lower. So let's rewind to the 2 decades across almost every category in beauty, almost every level, every type of company. What does a career like that actually build in you?
So I grew up in, 2010s. New York beauty, which is someone recently said that we were New York glass eaters.
What is that?
The Devil Wears Prada is not that far off, to be honest. Like that level of
I see what you mean.
rigor. Let's call it rigor. It's a level of competitiveness that I don't think a lot of people really recognize how competitive the beauty industry is specifically. But you learn, because it's such a deeply competitive and emotional environment, being in that level of launch, you know, you learn resilience very quickly. You learn how to not take things personal very quickly. These are all things that I consider gifts being a founder now.
100%.
Pitching the investment deck constantly and getting feedback constantly and not taking it personally and being resilient, having a real point of view on what I want to do and why, so that, you know, the arrows, when they do come in, it doesn't really hurt you, because it's, you know, you build this resilience.
Obviously, you have the whole business side of things. You have a huge marketing and brand element to it, but then you have the product. And the product, you're really in this iteration, research, development, test and learn. And not many industries actually combine all of those elements. It's almost like taking the super developed side of fashion when it comes to it needs to be fabulous, but on top of that, it needs to work and it needs to be great.
Unit economics is at the heart of everything. And then there's a deep understanding of the customer psychology, customer behavior use, the technology that you're selling them, which I think the technology is, you know, it's not given its flowers like it needs to. The technology is really cutting edge in cosmetics, especially in skincare. And I think that, you know, beauty has kind of been put in the pink ghetto for a very long time of like, it's not serious, it's just beauty, it's just girls. It's just girls buying things to make them pretty. But I mean, some of the most successful companies in the world have sold beauty products for 100 years, and that's how they are billion pound, $billion, billion euro companies.
So you went from a room of, this is just one example, a room of 50 marketeers at Estée Lauder. We're just talking the marketing team.
A whole floor in the GM building.
And now it's Nico at her computer. What is that reality like?
I think I learned early on in my career that the narrow and deep of working at Estée Lauder was not for me. So as I started moving through the industry, going to different brands, always smaller, because I learned very early that impact is what motivates me. So if impact is what motivates you, become a founder, right? Like, you can have impact on every decision. I've always known that working smaller and, you know, wider and more shallow, kind of having a large impact is for me. I think in part, though, having the self-knowledge too, because I'm neurodivergent, I have ADHD. So I think having that knowledge of people with ADHD are 500 times more likely to work for themselves than neurotypical people. So having the knowledge of, again, rigor, building my own thing, having myself fully so immersed in this world is what matches the way that I think. It's like a blessing and a curse. So on the blessing side, it's always been this kind of wild creativity, non-linear thinking. I've kind of been born a creative, and I will always exist in that way. And then there's the curse of like serious executive dysfunction. I'm forgetful. I miss appointments, things like that. But I always say that there's being a founder with ADHD, I used to say being an executive with ADHD, I reached this level of my performance of my career where I'm actually, it's good to have ADHD for all the important things. And for the non-important things, I'm terrible at.
And it doesn't matter, because those are the things that you can very easily delegate or outsource. Because I think before, people had a very set idea of what ADHD was, and now it's become a bit more broad. And so there's more awareness.
Yeah, especially with women.
It's very different for women than for men.
Very different. Yeah. Where a lot of our hyperactivity turns inward. So that oftentimes creates performance, you know, this kind of gifted and talented child who then turns into a high achiever. That's like a very typical ADHD woman.
I want to talk about something really interesting and actually very raw. You've shared the story where you've reached out to some people that you had worked with for so many years and they didn't get back to you. How do you move from that point onwards when these situations happen?
Don't take it personally. I
Yeah.
think I have such a belief in this brand. It's a product of 20 years of experience, and I'm so confident that it is exactly what the market needs right now, and that it will be received well, and that we will be successful. So when a lot of these partners who I had worked with before, either said, you're a little bit too small beans now, we can't work with you right now, or just simply didn't even respond.
Does it then push you to figure out and find out different routes and alternatives, which
Yeah.
you might actually find a better option?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And that actually is exactly what happened with the manufacturer who actually makes this. I had all of these contract manufacturers who I had worked with, and manufacturers who did different types of things. And the manufacturer I actually ended up going with was this tiny, tiny manufacturer who I didn't even have on my radar before. It worked out so well because they're so supportive of the brand. And like even the sales director there, like just so passionate about making this work and giving me the best terms and welcoming me. Like it really did work out for the best, where I feel like I have to really work for every resource that I have in this brand. And I create these amazing relationships because of it.
So I think these are things that, as a founder, it's almost getting over some of the ego that can come with the choice of suppliers that you work with.
And I think also, I mean, it's just a reminder too that like the only party that matters in this is the customer. The customer is my boss. The customer doesn't care who you work with. So the best product is the product that you can get the most value at in this stage.
That's such good advice. Is there something as knowing too much, and does that work against you sometimes?
I think it could work against you if knowing everything makes you into a know-it-all. Beauty moves so fast. So there's no possible way you could know it all even after, 100 years in this industry. But I personally got into a practice of learning and being curious, especially being more curious to get feedback and insights from people who are not initiated. I'm still learning so much even about my discipline that I've been training for, for so long. So yeah, it's about the mindset. Especially what we do in beauty, it's an art and a science. So there's always kind of a creative application to that science, even if it's the finance side of beauty. There's always a creative application, like how to deploy the money and how, so it's a fun industry if you're willing to learn.
Honestly, the more you talk about it, the more I'm seeing how, first of all, the word rigorous, I think, describes it perfectly. And you can have a lot of fun with it as well.
And it's like, how do you manufacture desire around what is truly just a technical product? I think that that's also the fun part too, is like really tapping into kind of like this psychology, but then also the creativity around how do you build a world around the technical product.
Tell me more about the world of Alta Marea beyond the technical side.
Yeah. So it's named Alta Marea, which means high tide in Italian. And it's kind of inspired by the story of Saint Andrea, who is this famous saint who saved the city of Amalfi from pirates, essentially. So basically every time there would be pirates coming to attack the city, he would have this swell of waves and kind of keep the pirates away. So it's kind of harnessing the power of nature for protection. It's all made in Italy, and I have a deep connection with Italy. It creates over 50% of all makeup in the world. Comes out of northern Italy. It's basically like this strip called Cosmetic Valley. Over 50% of makeup in the world is incredible. From there. And it was crazy to me that, being in Italy and speaking Italian to these manufacturers and knowing how innovative this strip is and how everyone goes there, for their formulation.
From indie to large corporations.
Yes.
Every size of business, every size of skincare. Like there isn't one brand that I've spoken to that hasn't mentioned Italy.
For whatever reason, there haven't been a lot of great Italian beauty brands. So it shocked me. And I always, in my class, because I teach beauty marketing, I always say, like, this is crazy. Like the next great Italian brand has to be in this room. That was kind of a big inspiration for me, essentially teaching master's students and undergrad students the world of beauty, which is really interesting because a lot of students go there to study specifically fashion or specifically luxury. And I hear so much at the end of my course, like, you opened up my eye. I'm starting to think about it now.
And also just look at how all the big fashion houses have ventured into beauty. You don't see it going the other way around. You don't see beauty brands venturing into fashion. So they're capitalizing on that opportunity. There's something there.
They absolutely
that cannot be ignored.
We all saw the Victoria Beckham documentary where she's like, my fashion brand not doing well, the beauty brand floated us for many years. Like, that's the story that I hear for a lot of licenses. So in fashion and a lot of luxury, discomfort is tolerated, whereas in beauty, discomfort is not tolerated. So if you buy a pair of shoes from a fashion brand that you love and they don't feel good, you'll still buy from that fashion brand. You don't kind of think that this is a product that is a direct reflection of that brand, and I'll never go back to them because it was uncomfortable. But if you use try a beauty brand and the mascara flakes or the sunscreen pills, or it doesn't feel good, never again.
That's so true. We're so unforgiving.
Very unforgiving. So I think that's also an important part of beauty too, why it's like, it's such a rigorous business. Every single part of it needs to feel comfortable and tidy for the consumer, because there's so many other industries, especially in luxury, where discomfort even can be a virtue. Like having the highest of heels, the tightest of corset, it can be a virtue where that would never be tolerated in beauty.
What are some of the things that you teach in your course about the landscape and where it's going?
Oh gosh, there's so much. Yeah, I think that there's, especially from the students, there's a lot of questions about like, isn't all beauty marketing lies? You know, isn't this all trickery? And like, who can lie better? Which is so interesting. Like, it's such a great study in how the consumer is perceiving us, especially for, very much the younger generations. They're so educated. So educated. They have all the tools to be able to educate themselves. So they almost like they approach, especially beauty, with this mistrust. There's a lot of scientific inquiry that is involved in cosmetic formulation, and the level of proof that you need to prove to a regulatory body that, just to put a claim on an advertisement it's in some cases astounding.
How do you stand out as a brand that is really backed by science?
You have to withstand the trends. So I'll give you an example. There's a lot of, there's like mineral sunscreen brands out there saying like, no carcinogens, no hormone disrupting filters, no baddies, no nasties, which is just so, it's just incorrect, because these filters would not be, especially on the EU market, they would not be allowed on the EU market. When it gets distilled down into kind of the social snippets, a lot of that nuance gets lost. I think that there is a reckoning though coming, especially with mineral filters, of like, what are we doing? With this Maha coded language of like, mineral filters are somehow more pure because they're not chemical. The conversation is really strange because they're neutral. They're mineral and chemical, they're all safe, right? You would use mineral filters if you are allergic to or sensitive to certain chemical filters, and they're recommended for babies. Otherwise, unless your dermatologist tells you otherwise and says mineral is better for you, then there's really no like sensitivities around it. It's kind of like being gluten-free when you don't have a gluten sensitivity. The reason why I created Alta Marea is because I felt like there wasn't kind of a brand like this in the market that is proudly non-misinformation. Being in the beauty industry for so long, have realized that sunscreen has kind of been this like lightning rod. UV filters has been this lightning rod for critique. And I'm watching the industry change from the inside. I'm watching sunscreen get, I guess, more and more bifurcated between like the clean beauty movement and clinical sunscreens. There is so much misinformation in between. There's a lot of consumers that are getting more and more, I guess, educated on sun health, educated on ingredients, mostly due to the TikTok and Instagram effect. But then they're not getting more educated necessarily on formulations or, the nuances of why some sunscreens are good or not bad or bad, or there's so much kind of vilification of the sunscreen industry and sunscreen in general, and it's kind of bizarre watching it from the inside out, because it's not the truth. It's not the truth at all. So in the US, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, sunscreen and UV filters are regulated as a drug. They're over-the-counter drug. Here in Europe, they're not. And honestly, most of the world, they're not. Here, they're regulated as a cosmetic ingredient. We have, depending on how you count it, about 32 UV filters that we can use here. So cosmetic formulators have a great toolbox to use all these great modern filters. But in the US, they have about 11. So there hasn't been a new UV filter approved in about 2 decades. It's been a very long time. And the reason why is because there's a lot of lobbying groups, a lot more kind of investigation into those UV filters, because it is an over-the-counter drug. This is not to say that they're more safe UV filters in the US.
It just means that there's a system in place that sort of impedes the progress.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, yes. Because there's filters that we use here, very new generation filters that have been approved for the past 20 years that simply are not allowed in the US.
For someone thinking about building a beauty brand, what are some of the things that can break it before they even go to market?
It all comes down to cash flow. Every decision that you make costs, whether it costs you time or money. It all comes down to, like, how can you be as efficient as possible with every single decision that you make?
It all becomes very real when you start to look at minimum order quantities.
It really does. Who can give me the best terms? How can we game this so that I can have the least investment up front until I have a positive cash flow? Our packaging for the launch was made in China. In the future, it's all going to be made in Italy, but because we wanted to source this specific mold, so it was made in China. It was about a week late because Chinese New Year had a delay. So it was about a week late shipping from China. And in between, when it was supposed to ship and when it did ship, the war in Iran started. And my shipping cost, which was originally like €2,500, went up to €22,000. 22,000! So obviously we tried to figure out some other situation. We held some bottles there. We shipped some by sea, but it was insane. Like you can't plan.
You can't forecast that. You can't plan that. It's completely unforeseeable.
If you kind of plan the journey to be like, let's be as strategic and thoughtful as possible, you can kind of roll with the punches for this. But yeah, there's always punches.
So tell me more about the business model.
So the product is D2C exclusive this year. So we are distributing in Europe only, made in Europe, obviously European filters distributing in Europe. And then next year, the intention is to roll out more in retail. But essentially, we're launching with a very small collection, kind of like the perfect collection. I lovingly call it slow beauty because I don't want to be a brand where we launch for launch's sake. It has to be a really great product that earns its keep on your shelf.
So we have 3 products, right?
3 products, exactly.
We have
La Luce, which is the daily facial sun serum. So that's SPF 50 for your face. Wear it every day. Then we have La Seta, which means the silk in Italian. That's for the body, so that's SPF 50. And then La Crema, which is the body cream. Super light. It's very fast absorbing, and it has like ashwagandha and other adaptogens in it. So it should feel great after sun.
So what does the path to sustainable unit economics look like for a brand at this stage?
The great thing about beauty is that you can have a nice margin. I feel like every year it gets worse and worse because products get more and more expensive to buy. So you got to figure out ways to keep your cogs down. So in beauty, there is kind of a rich margin that you can mine from. I think that it really comes down to forecasting and, really understanding what your product strategy and your distribution strategy is in the future so that you can properly forecast.
You launched a few weeks ago. And what worked? What worked so surprisingly well?
The press attention was really exciting. And it's still rolling in. Like I just approved the Vogue UK placement. Like it's all rolling in. People are very excited about the idea of having kind of beautiful prestige sun care in the space. When I finally got the product in my hands, and then when I sent it out to people that I respect, and everyone loved the product, it was a huge sigh of relief where I was kind of like, okay, this can stand by itself, no matter what we do in marketing.
So how did you approach the whole press chapter of being an entrepreneur? Were you able to leverage a lot of your network?
I mean, that was a big strength of mine, was bringing in my network. When I kind of announced that I would launch this brand, they were one of the first people I met with, and they were kind of like, how do we get involved? So they gave me an incredible setup so that they can really support me. And they were the people who had the press relationships. And I think that, PR agencies are very expensive, but they are the key to unlocking a lot of that, because when you get them to believe, it's not the easiest thing actually getting them on board. The way that they pitched it, I think, to editors was really the thing that made the difference. But I think also there's also press coverage that I've gotten outside of that. And it's simply emailing these editors and, showing them your passion. There's a lot to be said about just being brave and just finding their email. Yeah. Emailing them or DMing them on Instagram.
What's the thing that you were the most wrong about before you started?
I thought the fundraising would be easier. It's very hard, very challenging, very emotionally challenging.
I think the fundraising is so difficult and really easy to underestimate it. So where have you been able to leverage the Fundraise team, or where have you found support in that process?
Yeah, Agatha, she helped me kind of at the very beginning of my fundraise and investment readiness. So that's kind of pitch deck readiness and developing my strategy and how to reach out to investors. So that's been a tremendous help because especially as a solo founder.
So you're officially part of the 2% of female founders that receive funding.
Solo female founders.
Is even a smaller subset of that.
Yes, I think it's like 0.5% or something like that. So it's, we are a very, very small, very, very small representation in funding.
3 things you wish you knew before you launched.
1 would be how difficult fundraising is. 2 would be, I guess, more visibility into the timeline. I thought I had more time for certain things, but I should have done things as quickly as I could. And 3, I think, would probably be to bring more people on sooner, to not do everything myself the entire time.
Most expensive mistake?
And I don't know if I would call it a mistake necessarily, but it's been hiring people or agencies that didn't deliver on their value. I'm pretty good at letting those people go when it's not working. But oftentimes the work is done and it's not necessarily usable, but it's a mistake you need to make.
Advice you're glad you ignored?
I think the biggest piece of advice is don't start in the sunscreen brand, because everyone told me that. Everyone who I respect told me that. And they're speaking from their personal experience. But I'm glad I went with it anyway.
What is the biggest myth about sun care?
One of the biggest myths, and probably the most important, is that if you apply it in the morning, you don't really need to reapply. You really do need to reapply every 2 hours.
Nico, thank you so much.
Oh,
that was such a good conversation. Thanks for listening. Let's keep the wheels turning and the community growing. So make sure to subscribe. The bigger the channel, the bigger the guests we can bring you.